Hey guys, welcome to Andy's Corner, where I'm going to rant to you about books that I love. And today, we're going to do the Mid-Year Booktag Freakout. I know I'm late, I know we're past the mid-year at this point. To be honest, watching all of these videos and watching everybody talk about their books has really inspired me to get this channel up and running, so I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. I just got back into reading close to a year and a half, 2 years ago at this point, so I have a lot to catch up on, and I would love to hear any recommendations you guys have for me. So let me know down below if there's anything you recommend me checking out based on this list I show you guys today, and let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so to start out, we're going to look at the reading stats and what I've read so far this year. So I've gotten through 30 books so far in 2023, and I was basically MIA for about a month and a half. I was going through a move and I had all my books packed up and I didn't really plan it out super well. So I definitely missed a good chunk of time, but we're going to try to boost those numbers kind of going into the second half of the year. But starting out, the best book I've read in 2023. And when I was looking at figuring out what books were making this list, I was kind of sad to realize that I think the best book I've read in 2023 was the first book I read in 2023, and that would be Mr. Frederick Bachman's The Winners, the finale and the third book in the Beartown trilogy. Frederick Bachman's my favorite author, so I'll just preface that now. This will be the first time I talk about Frederick Bachman, but it most certainly will not be the last time I talk about him because I absolutely love every book he's written. I've read almost all of them. We'll talk about it more later in the video, the ones that I haven't read yet, but I don't know, man. The way that he writes his characters, it just feels so human. It's so honest, and he just has a way of connecting with me. And I think he does something that's really, really difficult in this book specifically, and that he's introducing characters in the third book of a trilogy that you still fall in love with as if you've known them the whole time. Of the trilogy, this was probably my least favorite. I still gave it 5 stars, but Beartown and Us Against You are just on my all-time list. They were just so incredibly good, especially Beartown. But absolutely love this book. Can't recommend it enough. I think you'll love Bachman, and if you love Bachman, then you and I are going to be great friends. So starting out with that one, really great start to the year. Anyway, moving on to the next book, the best sequel I read this year would probably also go to The Winners, but we're not going to do that to y'all, so we're going to give a different book name here. I don't have a physical copy of this one anymore, but it is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the Hunger Games prequel. We're not going to get into the semantics of prequel, sequel. I'm counting it. It's part of the same universe. It's hard to be completely unbiased when I'm talking about the Hunger Games books because there's always going to be that nostalgia factor because I read them as a kid, and I don't know, they just kind of shape the way in that you enjoy books and the type of books and the characters, and so it's hard to be completely unbiased. It wasn't a perfect book by any means. I thought the first 2/3 of it were incredible. I think I had it at a 5 star through the first 2/3 of the book, and then the last third of the book made me so angry that I think I ended up giving the book 3 stars total. So definitely not perfect. I haven't really read a ton of sequels because there's just so many books that I haven't read that I'm trying to just cast a really wide net. But that one will probably be up on that list as well. The next book is a new release that I'm really excited about, but I haven't read yet. It's not super new. It came out in April, so I'm not sure where the cutoff is for a new release, but I haven't been reading a ton of new books. But that would be Tress of the Emerald Sea. I also don't have a copy of this one yet, but every time I see it in the bookstore, I freak out. I think it's the most beautiful cover of any book I've seen this year, and I'm really excited to read it. It's by Brandon Sanderson. I haven't gotten a ton into the sci-fi fantasy genre, but I'm really excited about that book. The description sounds awesome. The reviews on it have been incredible, so it's one of those that I'm just waiting to pick up, and I think as soon as I do, I'll get through it pretty quick. Really, really excited about that one. And upcoming release that I'm also excited about is coming in the second half of the year. I don't look at new releases a ton just because I have so many old books to catch up on, but one I know is coming out really, really soon is the Percy Jackson, The Chalice of the Gods. Kind of the same thing I said about the Hunger Games book. There's a nostalgia factor. I grew up on those books. I love the universe. I like Greek mythology in general. So I think that one is going to be really, really awesome. All right, so the next up is the biggest disappointment of 2023. And ultimately, I landed on The Y Cafe. I just don't think this book was as advertised. It was short, luckily, so I didn't have a long time to be disappointed. But it's a novella, or described as like this fictional story that this character goes on to learn kind of some life lessons. It's just a self help book, to be honest. There's no subtlety to it. They kind of just beat you over the head with the fact that it's a self help book. The stuff that he learns is fine. The lessons you get out of it, I think, are useful. But I think if they just said it was a self help book, I wouldn't have been disappointed. But I just thought that they could have done a better job with it. So that was my biggest disappointment. The biggest surprise, I like we're moving in that positive direction, is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. This was something I hadn't seen the movie, I hadn't read the book. I'd seen like clips of it on social media, of course. But my girlfriend and I watched the movie just a couple weeks ago, and I was blown away by how good the movie was. Then I went out the very next day and bought the book, and I think I finished it within like a day or two. It's really short, also, um, but I loved it. Yeah, the way that this man writes about mental health, I don't know if mental health is described really well in a lot of literature I've read. I think it's been a little bit clunky for the most part, but this one just felt really like it just felt close to home for me, and so I just thought it was really refreshing. The style of it all being written in letters, I thought was really cool. So I enjoyed it a lot. Can't recommend this enough. Definitely made me sad at points. It's a really it. I would be careful going into it. There's a lot of really sensitive subjects that are covered. So I would do a little bit of research on what's in there before you read it. But I enjoyed it a lot, and I think you would too. Next up, the new author that I found this year that I really fell in love with. I haven't read multiple books by the same author this year, except for Frederick Bachman. No one's shocked. But I'm not going to count him because he wasn't a new author for me. What I ended up on for this was Gabrielle Zavine, and I've only read The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. I have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow on my TBR, and I want to get it. And I'll probably read that one by the end of the year. But the way that she writes, I just thought was really refreshing. I thought it was really intelligent, but it was easy to digest at the same time. And so I think it's a good way to balance things. And I think the characters she wrote, especially in this book, were just really lovable, really easy to connect with, kind of rooted for everybody, even if they had kind of opposing points of view on things. So really enjoyed the way she writes and really excited to read more from her moving forward. Next one is the newest book crush I had this year. To be honest, I'm just gonna skip this one. I'm happily in a relationship, and it's just not something I think about when I'm reading or digesting content like that. So nothing wrong with anybody that does that, but it's just not something I do. And so I'm just gonna move on to the next one, which is the favorite character I found this year. This one was really hard, but I ultimately landed on Arthur Truelove from The Story of Arthur Truelove. This man deserves the world, to be honest. I fell in love with him. I'm a sucker for characters that are down on their luck and are still willing to kind of give themselves to other people. Even when the people around them don't know what they're going through, they're still willing to be selfless and give and care for everybody else. I think it's I heard a quote a long time ago that it's like the nicest people or the most generous people are the ones that know that the world isn't that. And so I think Arthur fits that bill really, really well. And I think that you can't help but fall in love with him if you read this story. And yeah, I just can't say enough good things about Arthur Truelove. He's a saint, and we should all find someone in our lives just like him. All right, so the next book is Book That Made Me Cry. I think that would describe at least half of the books I've gone over. The winners, A.J. Fikry. I think I cried in Arthur Truelove, and Wallflower, definitely. If I wasn't crying, I was close to it. But the book I ultimately ended up with was I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. Um, this book was amazing. Similar to how I talked about Wallflower, I thought this book described mental health in a really honest way, in a really vulnerable way. I think part of the reason that it made me cry and I connected with it is I was just really appreciative of the author putting herself out there like that. I don't think it's something I would have been able to do. And I love Tokpaki, which doesn't hurt with the title, but I just really appreciated the way she represented mental health and kind of the idea of progress not being linear and all of those things. So, really enjoyed this book. It's another one that I would recommend reading. I would look into it a little bit before you read because it does obviously cover sensitive subjects, being about mental health struggles, but really enjoyed it. Thought it was really great. And I think books like this are only going to help the discussion around mental health kind of moving forward. But let's go back to a happier note. This is a book I finished pretty recently, a book that made me happy. And that is The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. Love this book. Need books like this sometimes. It's just really lighthearted. There's not a ton of like big twists and turns going on. It's just really enjoyable. The characters are pleasant. They're easy to root for. It's just like a warm hug, you know? I really enjoy books like this. Sometimes they're just perfect. Sometimes you need books with a little bit more depth, a little bit more substance. I get it. But if you're just looking for something lighthearted and fun, I think you'd love this book. I ordered the next two in the series too. They're on their way, so I'll be reading those as well. Maybe it'll make my best sequels list towards the end of the year, but really enjoyed The Bookshop on the Corner. Definitely would recommend it. So next up is pretty covers or best looking covers of a book I bought this year. Generally, I don't go for books based on their cover. I know that's a cliche. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just big on, I like buying books secondhand. I like finding good deals. That's just how I am, like my personality. So I'm usually finding the cheapest version of a book I can find. But I do have a couple that I really enjoyed or really think are great to look at. The first is the Book of Ichigo Ichi. I really love the teacups on it. It's really simplistic and minimalistic, and really enjoyed that. I think it's really beautiful. And the other one I had was In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. I've read 3 books by him now. I read House on the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door. I think I liked both of those more than this one. I still enjoyed this one, but the cover on this, I mean, I like that he has similar art styles or the same art style on all of his books. They feel almost connected in that way, and I just think this one looks really incredible. So that was my pick for that. And last up, we have must-reads to get to by the end of the year. This could go on for a long time. I tried to just pick 3 because I have a really long physical TBR over here, but at this point we'll just talk about 3. Legends and Lattes. This isn't going to be a surprise. We talked about one of those books being like a warm hug anyway, and I think this is going to be the same. Everything I've heard about it is great, character-based. Maybe I'll wait till fall, kind of gets the cozy season. We get to that one. Next is Lost Horizon. I know it's just an older book. I love the show Lost. I heard this was one of the inspirations for it, so I think it'd be really interesting to dive into. And then Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I've had this on my TBR forever. It's been my break glass in case of emergency reading slump book for a long time. So this one, and then the novella Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer are the only Frederick Bachman works that I haven't read, but I'll be getting to this one by the end of the year. All right, and that is going to be a wrap on my mid-year book tag freakout. I really enjoyed doing this. I love talking about books, and I love kind of having an outlet to do so. Love to hear any thoughts that you guys have about any of the books that I talked about. If you guys have any recommendations for me, again, I'm always open to hearing it. And if you enjoyed it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see the future book content we're going to do. See y'all later.